Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Henry Ford College regular Board of Trustees meeting. It's May 18th, 2020. It's 7 p.m. We're starting right on time. This is a virtual meeting. We're using Zoom webinar number 969-9289-3928. I will call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Mary Lane, present. Roxanne McDonald.
Here.
Michael Mead.
Present.
Adil Moseb.
Present.
Mary Petchlikoff.
Here.
James Thorpe.
Here.
Chair Hussein Berry.
Here, thank you. Next item, please.
Approval of minutes of the following Henry Ford College Board of Trustees meetings. Regular meeting, April 20th, 2020. Closed session, April 20, 2020. Make any necessary corrections and move approval of these minutes.
So moved. Support.
So we have a motion supported by Trustee McDonald, moved by Trustee McDonald and supported by Trustee Petchikoff. Are there any corrections or any comments? Okay, here are none. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald.
Yes.
Mead.
Yes.
Moseb.
Yes.
Petchlikoff.
Yes.
Thorpe.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes. We have a unanimous roll call vote. Please attach affirmative to note that, please. Next item, please.
President's items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Secretary. Good evening. Good to see you all again. I have a few comments and a few items that I think might be best handled if the board were to take them up. But before I get to those, I will give you a few updates. The college is obviously starting to get a little bit more comfortable with our new reality, and I was with the faculty organization this afternoon and morning, bled over into the afternoon, and I was pleased to see many of my colleagues from the faculty and the staff there. And I have to tell you, the faculty org chair, Dr. Paul Fisher, did a fantastic job. He had, I think, at one point, 220 people on that Zoom. I'm sorry, I think it was a Teams meeting. And he was playing air traffic controller pretty effectively. And I was also really happy to see a lot of my colleagues. So if any of those are on this call now, or if they see this recorded, I appreciate seeing you. And it was nice to be in a meeting where I just sat and watched and didn't partake. But I can report to the board that the entire organization was working well together, going through some important issues and making decisions on behalf of our students and our operations. I also want to give you an update on the Federal CARES Act funding that our college received. You all know that the CARES Act gave Henry Ford College a little more than $9.1 million, and half of that is to be devoted to the institution in taking care of losses for the coronavirus's pandemic. And we've talked at length about, and I've circulated several communications to the entire college explaining how that allotment will be helpful in bridging some of the lost revenue gap. But the student portion of that, a little more than $4.1 million, is a process that the Department of Education has directed us as a college to take in, potentially take in applications for need from students as a result of the coronavirus, and to give that money to students to help them weather the storm, so to speak. And we have elected to set up an application process, and it is underway now. I can report to you that we have had over 2,500 inquiries about that allotment of funding, and I believe the last count was 850 applications for that funding, and we are in the process of moving out over $770,000 to students associated with the CARES funding. The processing is being organized by the Vice President John Satkowski and his team in financial aid with Kevin Culler. And I've also talked with you all about other things we're hoping to do in a strategic manner with some of that funding. So stay tuned on that, but I wanted you to be aware that we are moving along with sending some of these funds to students who have been affected by the coronavirus. You also know from my communications to you, trustees, that we will be giving the Ford Motor Company the opportunity to park brand new F-150s in our parking lot. I believe the Ford Motor Company anticipates a little bit of a bottleneck in their supply chain management as they move product out into the field. And so they've asked us to lease part of our parking lot on our main campus for at least the month of June, and we will be doing that. You also know that a long-standing project on our campus has been to refurbish and restart the child care facility that is on the south part of our main campus. And I'm happy to report that the state of Michigan now has issued all the licensure requirements for that facility. And if we were not under a state mandated stay-at-home order, that facility would now be ready to take in clients. And I'm excited that when we do start to come back to the campus, that is something our community will now have access to. You have also asked for updates on what we were thinking about and planning for some semblance of appreciation to our graduates for this term. Of course, we have canceled the graduation, and it is still my hope that we are able to have another graduation at a time when it is more safe and frankly legal. And one of the things we really needed to find out was whether my idea and my team's idea of a later graduation was something that students who were graduates would find value in. And so we have been requesting responses from the graduates on a survey, and there are a little bit less than 1,300 graduates this year. And we have, as late as today, received 545 responses, which is 42%. And by survey standards, that's a pretty good response rate. I hope very soon to be able to report out to you all on the board what we've learned from those response rates and continue to hone the best we can a way to give honor and some joy to graduates who have not been able to, at least not yet, and not in the foreseeable future, enjoy the traditional way we celebrate an academic success in higher education, which is a commencement. You also know that I've asked Reginald Best and his team to come up with a way to send a gift box to graduates to honor their graduation, and I've given you details about that, and we do plan to have that shipped out soon. I regret to inform that the shipping of it is delayed because, you guessed it, the coronavirus has slowed down supply chain and delivery, but we are eventually going to make that something that graduates can feel happy about. I wanted to give you some good news and tell you about some exciting things that are happening on the campus that show we still are interested and moving forward on one of our main goals, which is helping students find access to meaningful careers as a result of their academic success. And I really want to highlight some of the great work that's being done in our career services area, which is headed up by our faculty member, Chad Austin, and many others. But it's hard to believe, but it is true that he is still working to get employers access to our students and students access to these employers. And I want to just go through a list of them first, so you all on the board know about them and can feel at least there's a little bit of good work going on in trying to get these students access to meaningful careers, but also so that those who watch this video or are on this Zoom meeting can pass this information along to anyone who's interested in gaining access to these employers. And so I'll start by saying tomorrow on May 19th at 10:30, there is a Zoom session that one of our great corporate partners, DTE Energy, will be hosting, and it's a recruiting session. They are going to be asking students to show up and identify themselves as interested in careers with that organization in the fields of electrical technology and power and trades. Also, and that's at 10:30. Also on tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services will be holding a recruiting session at a Zoom location for all programs in our college, but focusing intently on accounting, health programs, and customer service focused positions. The Department of Health and Human Services is doing significant hiring. I believe it was predating the coronavirus pandemic, but I think it's even increased as a result of it. Then on Wednesday, May 20th, Logicalis is holding a recruiting session. That is an IT firm that will be seeking our graduates and our students as potential employees in IT-focused positions. Then next week on Thursday, DTE Energy will be back and be doing another Zoom session recruiting electrical technology and power and trades students. Moving down to one of our most successful regional partners, and frankly, a national employer is Quicken Loans and Rock Central. That is the Dan Gilbert host of families. They will be holding several workshops, both to recruit our students and also give them some skills in how the students move out into the workforce. We've got Wednesday, the 27th of May, they'll be holding a workshop to help students understand and make use of the LinkedIn platform to identify themselves as potential employees for Quicken Loans, Rock Central, and other employers. On that same day, later in that day, they'll be doing a recruiting and then an educational aspect with students who are looking at sales and customer service focused positions. Then on Thursday, the 28th of May, they'll be doing what they're calling a lunch and learn workshop. All these things are virtual, but still going on to help our students trying to find positions within that company. And then Friday, the 29th, they will be putting on a panel where alumni from Henry Ford College at these Gilbert family of companies will be talking with our students. There'll be two panels. One is for IT in the late morning, and then a tech-focused career path in the afternoon. And by way of congratulations, trustees, you see that our agenda does have some of our great colleagues in the faculty who achieved tenure, and I want to specifically identify them. I don't know if they're on the call, but I do know this is a meaningful milestone for them, and I congratulate them. And they are James Anderson. He is an instructor in the School of Business Entrepreneurism, Professional Development, and all of these tenure achievement are effective May 18. Teresa Betts is a user librarian. She was helping Chairman Fisher this afternoon on his huge Zoom or Teams meeting, and she is now tenured. Glenn Wisniewski is a instructor in BEPID, the same school that James Anderson is in, and all three of those individuals have my congratulations and welcome now as faculty that are tenured. I want to draw your attention to your agenda associated with the appointment of associate deans. That is an action item for you all, but I will just note for you that you recall that process of selecting associate deans is directed by the collective bargaining agreement with the full-time faculty, the AFT Local 1650, and those elections have taken place. And as long as the board sees that those elections are appropriate, I would note that we will congratulate Robert Yarmurder and Kiambra Pearson for becoming associate deans in the two respective schools that are in your packets. The last congratulation I have is one of a person I hold in very high regard, and I saw his name there as an attendee, and that is the superintendent of the public schools. I'm pretty proud to be in a community with him leading our public school system. One, because two of my most important things in my life are my children, and each individual one of them, and they are moving through the Dearborn Public Schools, and I'm proud to have a leader like him there. But on the professional side, I'm also quite proud of him as a partner, because the third largest public school system in our state is Dearborn Public Schools, and we're so proud to have many, many more than 1,500 students from that school system that are currently Dearborn Public School students, but also Henry Ford Hawks. It's a great partnership, and I'm in now just the very end of my second year as my time here. Dr. Maleko has been fantastic in helping me learn about Dearborn and learn about the great partnership between the school and the college. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that I'm excited about and congratulatory about his rating from the board that I watched last week. So if we were back sitting together, I would be asking Dr. Maleko to stand up in the back of our boardroom and take a round of applause, because he's a great partner, and he deserves the highly effective rating that the board gave him. The last two things I'll bring up to you, and then I'll be quiet, are a couple things that I know that the board has asked me to contemplate, and I am interested in getting feedback on. But before I do that, I will just note that there are a couple presentations here. At the end of my comments and after any questions, Mr. Chairman, the presentations that are going to be delivered are listed on your agenda, and I'll be having Vice President Satkowski and Brian Bain, the budget director, be making presentations to you all. So that's why they are in here as presenters. So the two things that I just wanted to put before the board to note that they're something that the board might want to take up and give the college administrators some direction on are, first, I've been meeting with each of you and asking if you have questions or concerns about the committee that we have stood up to address the question of returning to campus. That's a robust group of professionals and hard workers, candidly, who are have a core team and then subcommittees that are analyzing that question and are going to be reporting up to the cabinet and then to me, and then I will eventually be reporting to the board, where I'll be asking the board to adopt our return to campus plan. And of course, the board itself has expressed to me its interest in that committee, and I'm not surprised about that interest. I just want to make sure that I am able to give the board as much possible involvement in that as it wants. And so whenever the board does want to be involved in that, please let me know. The second thing that I think that the board I would advise the board to consider taking up and giving direction to me and the college on is the question of insurance for employees who had been laid off at the beginning of this month. A few trustees asked me to calculate an estimate of what it would cost the college to provide those employees who had been laid off and who, while they were employed, received health insurance from the college. And that number of employees, I believe, is 43 employees. And we estimate that one of the avenues to obtain insurance for them would be to negotiate with one of our health insurance providers to allow those individuals to have health insurance. And we estimate that cost to be right around $42,000 to $43,000 per month for those employees. There are a couple logistics to work out if we were to do that, but I was assigned the task of reporting out that data from the board, the data of the number of people and the data of the rough estimate of the cost to obtain that insurance for those individuals. And I think the board would be well served to give me direction about what to do with that data. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I've talked a little less than 20 minutes. I try to stay under 15, but I'm done with my report now, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. For the health insurance, is that for the month of June?
Yes, those employees, Mr. Chairman, continue to be on their health insurance throughout the month of May, despite them being laid off at the beginning of May. If they did have health insurance with Henry Ford College and have not obtained other health insurance at this time or by the beginning of June, that is when they would no longer be on Henry Ford College health insurance.
Are there any questions for President Cavalluna? Trustee McDonald?
Yes, I was just wondering, when you were talking about the students portion of the CARES Act and how those applications are coming in, Does that overlap with the Hog Strong Fund?
No, the Hawk Strong Fund was something, and I can understand why you have that question. The Hawk Strong Fund was something that we set up before the
Right.
CARES Act was passed. We funded it through the foundation, and candidly through a lot of donations from staff and faculty of the college, with an initial seed funding of $50,000, and then it's gone higher. And we implemented a application-based process for students to apply to the Hawk Strong fund to get emergency funding, which continues on. Since that time, the CARES Act funding came through, and much of the things that CARES Act funding would give to students, so would the Hawk Strong Fund give funding to. So they may overlap in the things that they would give support to, but they are separate pots of money from separate sources.
But they're both primary COVID-related struggles for students?
Yes, the CARES Act is very prescriptive about that. The CARES Act, very, very tightly, in my opinion, and there's some debate about this in higher ed circles, but very tightly identifies what can be used, what needs can be met by CARES Act funding. The Hawk Strong Fund, of course, is something we devised, and we took donor dollars, including my own, to devote towards emergencies. And we initially said this was to help students through things caused by COVID-19. But if we decided that there was something that was not associated with COVID-19, we could change the metrics or the restrictions on the Hawk Strong Fund. We do not have that liberty associated with the
Right.
CARES Act.
I'm not suggesting that we do, but I'm just wondering, is there any, would there be any restrictions on a student applying for both?
No, there would not be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Trustee Petrikov?
Yeah, in regards to the healthcare insurance, we're already heading in towards the end of May. How quickly would you need to act upon this in order to make sure that this would be in place if you were so directed? Because you do have to, I guess, negotiate with Blue Cross Blue Shield in order to continue at a certain cost point for these 43 employees. So when would you need to have an answer from us as to
We're
a
going to have
direction to
to
go?
act on it tonight, Trustee Petrikov. Yeah. so-
Okay, just
I
wanted
mean, we
to
can
make
take care
sure.
of that right now and continue with the questions. I know Trustee Lane had a question. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to offer health insurance Henry Ford College employees for the month of June, with the note here not to spend more than $50,000.
Second, but I,
That is.
oh, go ahead.
I need a motion and support.
Oh,
I'll second that motion.
Okay,
Somebody
so we
who
have Trustee McDonald
moving.
moving and Trustee Dr. Mead supporting. Are there any comments or questions for President Cataluna?
I would like to add something to that motion, though, saying that it is due to the COVID situation that we're currently in, and it's not to set precedent going forward.
Trustee Lane?
Check on unmuted. Okay, these are 43 people that we laid off in the middle of a pandemic. We have selected these 43, or we've identified these 43 because they were people who were paying at least partially or had health care through the college and would lose it by their layoff. So in other words, it was not part-time people. It's people who up until right now had health insurance. And we, so far as I know from reading the background material, there is only the COBRA for them to purchase, besides going out on the open market, which is prohibitively expensive. I don't think there's anything else except us purchasing this. They can't get Obamacare. They can't get any other reasonable ones. Most of us know that COBRA and regular purchase are going to be about $13,000, $15,000 per year, which most unemployed people can't afford. So I understood from something that President Cavalluna gave us that we could pay up to 3 months worth of insurance for them. And personally, I would like to do that. It's $43,000 or $40,000 a month. I would rather, I would think that it would be appropriate in a pandemic when everyone's health is at risk to have them have access to health care for 3 months. We can't do any more than that, but I would like to do the most that we can.
Trustee McDonald, are you okay with amending your motion to include the month of July and August of 2020?
Is there any other discussion on that?
Trustee Petrikov?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of the things we did discuss was what if some of these employees go out to find another job somewhere? Are we going to continue to pay? I mean, I think what we have to do is be careful because we're making a very generic kind of motion right now, that we should word it in a way that we are giving the authority for President Cavalluna to go forward and develop a plan to acquire a continuation of health care for the employees that still need it for the next foreseeable future who are laid off during this pandemic. But I think that we need to be cautious that we've got some protections in there for things that could change. Somebody going out and getting employed by another employer, or leaving the state, or all kinds of other things. We don't really know what the cost is going to be. If we cap it at 50,000 and Blue Cross says, hey, we're not making that kind of a deal right now for you, you know, it might be something different. We need to give President Cavalluna and John Sikowski some ability to flesh this out a little more completely. That's my only suggestion, is that, you know, we're throwing very little into this motion right now.
Thank you. Trustee Thorpe?
Going along with what Trustee Petlicoff says, I'll switch around this way. By putting that cap at 50, or if we take it and multiply it by 3, if we're talking about 3 months, we need to have some type of cap. We're not writing a blank check. We still have to figure out our budget. It would be nice to take care of these people that we had employed, but we don't want to put ourselves in a bad financial situation trying to take care of them either.
Or set a precedent moving forward for future situations that may not warrant this kind of support going forward in another time, another place.
Would we feel comfortable amending the motion to say, you know, up to 50,000 and up to 90 days, we're giving authority to the president to see what he feels is the right thing? Are we comfortable doing that? I'd like to hear some thoughts. Trustee Moser.
I would like to also mention that if knowing that people might take other jobs, that might be a realization of reduction of costs. So it might not be 150. Now we're talking about 150,000 for the 3 months. So it might be between 100 and 140. It depends on how many people really sign up. So I'm also in support with Trustee Lane in getting these folks at least until the month of November, where actually the market will open, where they can have and elect and buy an affordable insurance. And this is problematic not only for our college, but for the entire nation, because it just speaks volume that people are very tied to their employment as far as insurance, and that needs for a bigger conversation, obviously, of covering folks without the need to be employed.
Do we know if it would be less expensive to do it 3 months in one stint, or to approve it each month going forward for up to 3 months?
I do not know the answer to that. I do know that if we elected to seek to to obtain insurance for laid off employees, we would go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, who is our primary provider for health insurance in these spaces, and we would ask them to allow us to provide this. And my understanding is that Blue Cross Blue Shield have announced that they are willing to provide this insurance to laid off employees during this pandemic for a limit of 3 months. And when I say provide, I don't mean pay for it. I mean allow institutions like us who have an agreements with them for our employees to extend that insurance to our laid off employees for up to 3 months. That is what Trustee Lane was referencing. And if, as I understand it, the motion passed as it's now given, what I would take from the board's direction would be to begin negotiations immediately with Blue Cross Blue Shield and find out the answer to several of the questions that have been posed here, but also the one that Trustee McDonald just noted. Is there an economy of scale if we purchase 3 months? Is it a month-by-month basis? I apologize, I don't have those answers right now, but I will note in response to Trustee Petlicoff's question at the beginning, when we should do this, the answer is quickly, because I can tell you the team that will do this at the college will be the HR and legal teams, and if this is their task, they have asked to have authority right away to get answers to these questions. I do think it is wise to give me direction about the goal, which is to accomplish giving the option of health insurance to these individuals, and then a limit on my spending. I do feel confident that the team at the college can take that amount of direction, but also that amount of liberty, and provide a good outcome for the goals you're trying to achieve.
Trustee Petchakov, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure then that how we frame the motion then is that we are going to direct President Cavalluna to move forward with investigating, acquiring, or maintaining health coverage for up to 90 days for those employees who have been recently laid off due to the COVID, not to exceed whatever dollar figure you
150.
want to put in there.
Well, I heard the number 43,000. That's why I threw the 50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
50.
Pretty
Yeah.
safe there. Yeah. So,
I like
okay.
the way that you had reworded that, President Barry. I think
Okay.
that's,
Who supported the motion, Trustee Dr. Mead? Dr. Mead, are you okay with the amended motion?
Yeah, I'm happy with
for
it.
up to 3 months. I do have another question.
Trustee McDonald?
Are there family members that have been on their the employee's policy? Are they included in that 43?
Yeah, what we did was we took what the employee was using for the insurance line by line for the 43 lines and costed it there. And
Okay.
I've talked to one laid off employee who has told me that her family was on the health insurance. So I know it includes some individuals who are using the family choice.
For my part, that gives me even greater confidence in asking the rest of the board to incur this cost. I understand it's a cost that we by law don't have to do. It's simply a moral obligation. But to know that someone's family is going to be covered gives me even greater satisfaction. So I would ask everyone to do it.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the question. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Mosip,
Yes.
Petchlikov,
Yes.
Thorpe,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll go to the...
May I
Mr.
ask
President?
one more question before the president's items?
Of
before we
course,
move
Trustee
on?
Lane.
The Hawkstrong Fund was mentioned, as was the CARES Act, and President Cavalluna just mentioned 800 applicants who brought something forward. I'd like to ask what those needs, if they identified specific needs, and do we know, will the CARES Act monies cover all of that? Is there a time limit on how long we have to spend that money? If people apply to both, what typically will it be covering? Is it living expenses? Is it tuition? Can you give us more on that? And then the CARES Act, does it revert to the federal government if we don't spend it?
Okay, I'll take the questions. First, I'll address the questions as they relate to the Hawk Strong Fund. That fund, as I mentioned, is set up by the college, and the only restrictions that exist on that are those that we impose upon ourselves. Now, it is a significantly smaller pool of money. I believe it's not more than $60,000 or $70,000, but that we can change no matter what. And my understanding of what we've done with it so far since the pandemic has hit is to help students who have requested for loss of the ability to pay for rent, loss of the ability to pay for books, loss of the ability to have utilities paid for. That is evaluated by our counseling department and the foundation team, and we can make adjustments to that whenever we want, and that money is the foundation's, and it does not have an expiration date. Before I move to the CARES Act fund, Trustee Lane, any other questions about the Hawk Strong Fund?
So rent, other unmet needs, tuition? No.
I have seen some requests for tuition, and I do not know yet if we've gone that far yet, but I'll get back to you. Okay. Now, as regards the CARES Act, the Department of Education is the one issuing restrictions on that, and it is one of the most written about and discussed topics in higher education right now. You pull up any higher education periodical, and it will show you that there's a lot of debate about what institutions like Henry Ford College can use this money for to devote towards students. And what I will do at the conclusion of this board meeting is I'll send the entire board the application that we have students fill out to seek this funding, and you'll see the types of things that are applicable. But right now, in our following of what we understand to be the federal guidance, it's pretty narrow. In fact, it's more narrow than a lot of higher ed leaders, including me, wish that it were. You can't use it to pay tuition. You can't use it to remove debt for the college. In other words, a student who has a bill for whatever it may be, tuition or fees. You can use it for technology costs incurred. You can use it for utility costs incurred as a result of having to stay home. We're still candidly trying to figure out what the real envelope is on that. And one of the things that I've been pushing pretty hard on is to say, well, why can't we use this for grants towards completion or tuition? And that's an ongoing debate at many higher ed institutions, and candidly Henry Ford College. Vice President Satkowski, do you want to add anything to that? Trustee Lane, he's at the tip of the spear there. And if you do, Vice President Satkowski, go ahead.
Just a couple of items, and that is, with the CARES Act, the student absolutely has to be Title IV eligible, or they can fill out a FAFSA form to become eligible. It's not for the general population. We have a specific population that this applies to, and it's those students who are currently on Title IV or will be on Pell Grant funding eligibility. That's pretty narrow. That's how it was calculated to begin with, and it's like Mr. Cavaluna has said, it's related strictly. It's very, very, very focused in how those funds can be distributed. To answer your question regarding will we give any money back? Is there an expiration date on it? No, there's not, and I guarantee you we're not going to give any of the money back. It's 50-50. 50% is the least amount that can be given to students for out of our $9.1 million. If we don't utilize it all from the institutional side to address things, then we'll find more students eligible for that. But it's very narrow in terms of our usage of it right now.
Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, with
Are
the
we able to purchase Chrome?
go ahead,
Yeah.
Trustee Lane.
Yes. Students can purchase computers, get reimbursed for computers, software, printers, peripherals, and
Oh,
utilities.
okay.
Mhm.
And internet services too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And while Vice President Sadkowski was talking, I was able to confirm that the Hawk Strong Fund, we are using that to reimburse requests for tuition. And as I said, Trustee Lane, I will circulate to the entire board the application for the CARES Act funding, and that will show you what students can check off as their needs right now. I've also forwarded to the board a couple news articles where institutions are challenging the restrictions on this student allotment and suggesting that it should be more open to let students have more access to things like tuition. That's a really unknown question right now. And I've talked to Congresswoman Dingell about this, and right now it's unknown.
Trustee McDonald, do you have a question?
I do. With the narrowness of the students that may apply for the CARES Act, those being Title IV or Pell Grant students, I would like to at least make a consideration to those that are applying for the Hawk Strong Fund to be able to do that for sure, and maybe even take first choice if they don't have availability of the CARES Act.
I'm happy to pass that on to the foundation and the counseling department, who kind of set up the rubric to analyze that, and I'll report back to you their recommendation on that.
Okay, because I don't know how many of each pool of students we have, but I don't want students who do have a need to be able to not get any funds just because they don't fall into the parameters of the CARE Act. And I'd
Well,
like to
the
make
other
sure that-
problem is if we don't allow payment on some tuition, people may fall out of eligibility if they're not paid up to date. I'm thinking just quickly on it. So in order to enable them to get the one funds, maybe the other funds have to be used. So a student has to be in good standing, I would presume, before we would give them CARES Act. And if we have to pay some on tuition to make them eligible for other benefits, there's a greater good in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Great discussion. Let's go on to the next item, please, Madam Secretary.
That would be discussion items. The first item is proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, board report 4555. That is Vice President Sadkowski's.
Madam Secretary, Vice President Sadkowski is going to make this presentation. He may have support from Mr. Boehm on this. He may also use a PowerPoint presentation that I believe Ms. Demetria will be shepherding onto your screen. I add one caveat to what Vice President Sadkowski and his team are going to be presenting, and that is that this budget has been particularly difficult to develop because so much is unknown, and every budget presentation at this time of year is based on estimates, but this one, the estimates are really hard to make, and I've met with small groups of trustees to explain those estimates. I've sent emails to the entire college community noting those estimates. But my plan is to give you this presentation that notes several estimates. And to be candid, the estimates that are most difficult to gather are the amount of lost revenue that the pandemic will cause. You're going to get a detailed analysis of that today, but when we bring you the final budget for you to vote on in June, some of the things you hear today may have to be updated. We hope not much, but some may. More than certainly any typical year, I can tell you that. So please understand that much of what is being done here may be refined even further when we present the final budget to you in June. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Satkowski.
Okay, and I know everybody's just been waiting with bated breath to hear this. Kathy, is everybody able to see the PowerPoint presentation, or does everybody have a copy of it?
Brian, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, ma'am, I will do that.
Okay, so as President Cavalluna has mentioned, this has been a very challenging work on this budget. This had started back in January and February under normal conditions, and has really taken some extra effort on, particularly on great work that Brian has done with regards to getting us where we're at. On the first page, we do a summary of where we were initially for 2020, the mid-year adjusted budget for fiscal year 2020, and then the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. You can see that the proposed revenue for 2021 is a little over $85 million, comparison to the adjusted budget in 2020, which was a little over 91 million, and the expenses, which are just a little over $85 million compared to almost $91 million in expenses in the adjusted budget. You can see the three lines where we had started out 2020, mid-year, 793,000, and this proposed budget, by the time Brian and I are done discussing it, we'll show where we're at in terms of $3,000 of surplus, which is in most cases a rounding error. So it's basically a break-even budget. I will go over the revenue numbers, and then I'm going to turn over to Brian to go through some of the expense items where our tag team will come in effect here. But we're looking at a small reduction in bad debt, primarily because tuition and fees will be reduced and associated with our current bad debt allocation. We slightly can make up some additional, not a whole lot, but we wanted to just show, hey, we're still making progress on bad debt to the amount of around $31,000. The big item, and I mean the big item here, is the decrease in state appropriations. Again, this is $4.3 million in comparison to where we started 2020. A hit for 2020, and then that hit going into 2021, and an additional 10% drop in state appropriations for 2021. So you can see that's almost over $4.3 million. A slight adjustment in property tax adjustments, as well as personal property tax reimbursement. The personal property tax comes from the state, and the property tax, of course, through our local governments. Talking to our local folks, getting some advice from Tom Wall on the P12 side. I've taken a small reduction in that area in the amount of $272,000. Other revenue, there's actually an increase in other revenue. We did not increase the interest earnings portion of our budget at mid-year enough to reflect our expected end results. But of course, we didn't push it up as high as what we were anticipating. But there is some room there to add another $76,000 to our investment earnings line. This revenue from student mix is just a small amount of change from the prior year, but it shows some movement from in-district to some out-of-district student. The mix changed very, very slightly. So when we look at that tuition, the small pickup of $125,000. But the real big item on this, second biggest item on this group, is the enrollment decrease versus 2020. Where we were at in 2020, if you recall, we were a -3%. We increased it to a +2% by mid-year. And what we've done is decrease it back down by 5.5%, predicated upon the fall and winter and upcoming spring in 2021 semesters. Summer semester modification, we're picking up $800,000 here, because when we initially did this budget, we were looking at spring and summer being split 50-50 between 2020 and 2021. When you count the number of days that are in 2020 and 2021, the allocation should have been more 1/3, 2/3. So we're moving $800,000 of revenue from 2020 into 2021 to comply with the accounting rules that you realize your revenue in the year in which you are incurring the expense. So that's why there's a pickup of $800,000 for 2021 in revenue. Modification to excess contact hours charge, again, an adjustment to our rates that we'd used in the prior year. It was more than what we had anticipated, so there is a slight increase in those excess contact hour charges for hours beyond, say, a 3 credit hour class. It's now a 4 credit. It's now 4 contact or 5 contact. In looking at that, there was a small increase. So, proposed revenue changes against our mid-year budget in January, over $6 million, $6,318,000 to be more accurate. So how do we address that? The next slide shows the proposed expenditure decreases. And Brian, if you'd like to
Sure.
go ahead and walk through this.
Sure.
Be my guest.
Yeah, the first item on this is the contractual increases, which is almost $1.4 million, which includes steps and so forth for 1650 and 71 and SSA, DSOEA, and exempt staff. There's a decrease in the adjunct, probably mostly from the fact that we're down 5.5%. There's a slight decrease in the fringe benefit adjustment. We have a significant assumption in terms of retirements and replacements of $2.3 million. Included in we took a number of positions that were open, and we have eliminated those positions, and we have reduced the budget by $1.6 million. And then we went after non-payroll items, and we reduced the budget another $780,000. One thing that I should mention is that in last year's budget, we eliminated positions to the tune of $820,000. And we also reduced non-payroll budget items another $523,000. So in 2 years, we have really taken significant costs out of our budget here. The next item is the reduction in mandatory transfers of $570,000. We expect our utilities to be a little bit less because of not having as many people there. Obviously, there's not a lot of people there right now, and a decrease in interfund transfers of about $300,000. And then we had a one-time initiative this past year of $700,000, and that won't be repeating next year. And then other decreases of about $240,000. So our total expenditure decrease is a little over $5.5 million for next year.
Some of those the decrease in the mandatory transfers, what had happened there then during this year was there were a number of projects that were put in the maintenance area, such as the railings, the work being done on some roofs, some one-time monies being done for renovations of some different labs and so on. So those transfers out of the general fund into the capital fund, because those will end up being capitalized and turned into projects, weren't materializing this year. But that was a one-time thing we did last year on a number of maintenance projects to put money into the capital fund to then fund those efforts going forward. So thank you, Brian. So then at this point, some of the carryover initiatives that Brian was referring to, that $700,000, these are some of those items that were listed as primary for 2020. They will continue on. Those monies have been transferred to the capital fund to address these, such as the renovation of the chemistry lab, the rekeying of the security within the campus, work done on the Sisson Art Gallery, as well as security updates for cameras and the liberal arts building railing, which I mentioned. There were a number of things too in terms of marketing and increasing the marketing budget and compliance and student success and retention areas, which were accomplished in 2020. So some of those are still in process. Some of those have been completed, but the funding has been moved out of 2020, not allocated for 2021 to meet demand of those projects, and have been put into the capital fund. This is just a comparison. The most current data we have is fiscal year 2019, which is usually reported in February, March from the state of Michigan. It shows our comparison of dollars per student, full-time student, for both state appropriations, property taxes, and tuition and fees. The first one in red are the state appropriations. You can see where statewide we're below the statewide average. Macomb and us are pretty close together. Wayne's a little bit above. Schoolcraft is below us, as is Washtenaw, and then Oakland. But we are below the state average in the far left when it comes to state appropriations per full-time student. Where we really get hit hard is in the property tax, and all of you know that 1 mil in Dearborn generates a little over $3.5 million, whereby in Wayne County, a little over a mil generates close to $36 million. So it bears out the fact that we're property tax poor when it comes to per student count, and we're probably the lowest in the state when it comes to dollars per student. The reason our tuition seems to be a little bit higher per student, again, is because we have over 60% of our students come from out of district, so the out of district rate comes into play there versus the in-district rate, where our students are right around 30%. If you look at Wayne, or if you look at Schoolcraft, or you look at Macomb, it's exactly the opposite. In Wayne, it's 90% in-district, 10% out of district. Macomb is not quite that huge, but it is in the 80s compared to in the teens for in-district and out of district. So with that, our final slide summarizes where we began, showing the little over $85 million in revenue, a little over $85 million in expense, for a break-even budget being planned right now at just close to $3,000 surplus. Thank you, Brian. Questions, President Cavalluna? Okay, let's see. Secretary Lane, yes, you have a question.
A question, not really a question so much. I think we're all pretty used to seeing the presentations, and we've been prepped a little bit on it. I just would like to make a statement and have you confirm whether it's true or not. On the contractual increases, that's more money that will be spent this year than was spent last year. That is 1.4 million approximately in the budget assumptions. That's a pay increase that's what would be called a pay increase in the normal world, like in the business world. People are getting more money, even though it's not being called pay increase, correct? Okay,
that's correct, yes.
Yes, so it's correct to say that even though we're in what we'll later define as either a Great Recession or a Great Depression of 2020, many of our contractual employees will get a pay increase. They'll get more money this year, correct? Or next year, sorry, in the 2020,
or
2021
July
budget.
1.
Yeah, they will be getting more money. They will get a pay increase. And then also I'd like to confirm, although we generate overall less property taxes than other districts, we have a high rate of property tax in this district. It's a fact of life, correct?
Correct.
That we can generate less money because we have a smaller tax base. We tax ourselves a lot. I don't know what other people have heard, but I've heard a fair amount that we're a high district, and that I've heard from people that they do not want to increase it anymore. We're going to see, I think, increases in taxes, but that's going to have to be very, very carefully determined by all of us.
You're absolutely right, Secretary Lane. We do have the highest millage rate of the community colleges in the state. We're at four mills is what we're at. We're generating almost $14 million on those 4 mills. And the district that surrounds us and landlocks us generates over $65 million on just under 3 mills. So that's pretty dramatic when it comes to a comparison.
Trustee McDonald, do you have any questions? Trustee Dr. Mead? Trustee Muzib? No. Okay. Trustee Petrikov? Trustee Thorpe? Thank you very much, Mr. Sadkowski.
Thank you, Chairman.
We can go on to the next item, please, Madam Secretary.
Proposed winter 2020 TIF projects, board report 4556. Vice President Sadkowski, starring again.
This proposal was initially done by the TIF team. They did a tremendous job in terms of looking at the dollars and the available projects. It was a little bit over almost $500,000 in projects. But after looking at it and reviewing it with Bob James, who's chairing this committee, and the president, we're postponing a number of those projects. We're not canceling them, we're postponing them because at this time it would be more difficult to try and get those projects implemented, with vendors being off, with our own internal folks limited in what can be done because of the stay-at-home order. So we are bringing forward 4 projects out of that group that would be able to be implemented and used for the betterment of students and security of the campus over the next few months to have them implemented. Bob, are you available? I know you said you were going to be at the meeting. I don't know if you wanted to talk about these. Kathy, is Bob James?
Yeah, he is with us.
Okay, Bob, if you'd like to go from there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for considering our TIF projects. We have 4 of them that are moving forward. The first one is out of recruiting and enrollment services. The folks do a lot of outreach, and they do a lot of work when they go out to high schools, they go out to areas, and they're in need of some new laptops. It's always nice to be able to present a computer when they're showing something, and then have actually the students sit down and look. And so they're asking for some laptops that can help them with that. The next project is from Campus Safety. We're using some extremely old cameras over in some of the areas, and they want to do a little better job at looking at security in Building M, and so we'd like to have some camera replacements and upgrades in that area. Over in social science, like to convert one of the rooms to lecture capture. That includes cameras and video areas, all kinds of new recording equipment, so both the instructor and the students can have a new technology to be able to especially work in this kind of environment where we might have to do some distance learning. This allows the just another area where we can record lectures and do things. And then the last area in enrollment services, the call center software that we're currently using doesn't have a lot of utility to it. In other words, you have to be on campus to take the calls. The new software is kind of state of the art. It allows somebody to log in anywhere and start taking calls. This will greatly reduce the wait time and the service time for anybody calling into the Welcome Center to ask a question.
Great.
The whole
Thank you
total
very
is
much. Are there any questions?
$105,000.
Are there any questions here? Trustee Thorpe.
So the fourth item that you mentioned, the way I'm picturing it is that we would then be able to have those employees work remotely.
Correct. They would
Right.
be able to log in via their local phone and log into the system. The system would be able to route the calls to their location.
Thanks.
Trustee Lane.
You're on mute.
Yeah, just this remark. I've been surprised at how much people are able to really be creative. I've heard of people doing chemistry labs now by remotely, which is kind of amazing to me and a little bit scary. But I hope that there'll be somewhat of a pullback on the TIF, just because we don't know at this point how much remote technology we'll need. I think that we should keep some more in reserve because we also don't know how we're going to use things in the future and whether we're going to use physical spaces the same way that we have in the past. So just, I guess I would just recommend to the whole faculty and everyone that's deciding the TIFs maybe to show some caution in committing us to the same old method of learning that we've used before.
Thank you. Trustee Moser.
I think my question was already asked, but I appreciate seeing more vendors on there. That shows that we're getting a good deal on those contracts. So that's great to see, more than 3.
Okay, anybody else? Any questions? I don't see anybody. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Trustee Petchikoff.
I just wanted to, I was going to say something similar along the lines of Trustee Lane about, I think that we may see, at least for the next foreseeable future, different use for these TIF funds than what we've had in the past, at least for the next year. And that I agree that we need to be kind of thinking further ahead as to how we can support more of our virtual learning systems and what we need to get those rolling in a much more strategic way, if necessary, if this continues for any length of time. So I appreciate that.
I'm sure we're all in agreement there. Trustee Dr. Mead.
I'm actually a little disappointed that more faculty have not applied for this money. It is directly used, it is used for technology investment. And I think it shows that they're working awfully hard. They probably don't have any time, but we are definitely in the age of technology, and I think this money should be used. And I'd like to see more applications. That's my point.
So if I can respond to that.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation last time. I remember having it. And believe it or not, we actually spent all the money, but we felt it might not be good to just spend it when we are laying off some people and just target some very high potentially used projects. We actually have all the money spent in projects waiting for a better time to fund them. So we do have a whole bunch of projects in the background waiting.
Thank you. I apologize.
Okay. Mr. James, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, sir. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Citizen participation. I don't know that we have any cards. Has anyone seen any cards?
I did not see any.
Okay.
No.
All right. So the next item then is action to approve action items. Move to approve action items numbered 1 through 6 as recommended in this agenda. We do have a full agenda with numbers 7 and 8, but those require roll call votes. So 1 through 6 plus a supplement.
So moved.
Madam Secretary, if we can include all 8 items, hold on one second. If we can include all action items together, because we are going to have a roll call vote anyways, unless somebody wants to pull them. So we can go ahead and move with.
So you do not want separate roll calls on all of those on 7 and 8? So just one roll call.
I don't think it's not necessary unless somebody wants to pull. Please.
Probably not. Okay, so move to approve action items numbered 1 through 8 with plus supplement.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion. It's moved by Trustee McDonald, supported by Trustee Petrikov. I do want to point out action item number 7 that's calling for a closed session for tonight. And we do have number 8. It was a supplement that's calling for a closed meeting Thursday night at 6 o'clock. Just want to point that out. Is there any questions or?
Chair
Trustee
Barry,
Petrikov?
would you like to, 4, 7, and 8, would you like so that the audience knows what the topic is for the closed session? Because I think kind of legally we need to make it clear that we have a reason for calling for the closed session. And we don't do a rundown like we do at the P12.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do that tonight. I'm right in front of me. For action item number 7, the motion is move to approve the Board of Trustees enter into electronic closed session as requested by the President at the business conclusion of this Board of Trustees regular meeting to discuss the President's evaluation pursuant to Michigan Open Meetings Act MCL 15-268A. Thank you, Trustee Petrikov, for reminding me. And let me get number 8, unless, Madam Secretary, do you have that in front of you or?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I can minimize it. If you don't, I'll minimize.
I have it on my
screen.
phone.
If you have it, okay.
Yeah, so.
I have a tab
Number
somewhere.
8, the recommended motion is move to approve the Board of Trustees enter into an electronic closed session pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 2020-75 and in compliance with Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act for strategy session in connection with negotiations of the collective bargaining agreements. That's on Thursday, May 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. Thank you, Trustee Petrikov, for reminding me.
Well, thank you, Chair Barry. I just want nobody to have any questions about why we disappeared.
Okay, now, are there any questions for the administration on any of these action items? Okay, if I don't see any, so why don't we go ahead with a roll call vote, Madam Secretary?
Lane, yes. McDonald,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Mosa,
Yes.
Petchlokoff,
Yes.
Thorpe,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes. Again, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Board of Trustee business, acknowledgement of correspondence. No correspondence, it appears.
None
I
here.
think so. Yeah.
Next is board
Next item.
committee reports. I don't think there are
Have
any
any? No.
committees.
Next item.
Okay, requests for information and or future agenda items.
Anybody? Okay, moving on. Next
Board
item, please.
member commentary. I would like to request a moment of silence for the good friend in Morris Hood that we lost to the COVID-19 virus, and as well as so many other people. I would ask that we recognize his passing.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Trustee Lane. Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
I was going to say the same thing. Trustee,
Oh,
or
okay.
I'm sorry, Morris Hood was just a friend to everyone that he met, and we lost a great statesman, and I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledged his passing, as well as those others that have been affected so terribly by this horrible pandemic.
Senator Hood was a good friend of many, but just as important, he was a good friend of Henry Ford College. He always served us well in the House and in the Senate. I remember he was the go-to person by the administrators at Henry Ford College. So yeah, we did lose a good one. And yes, moving on. Next item, Madam Secretary.
Trustee Lane, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Future virtual meeting dates tonight, immediately following this close. HFC Board of Trustees closed session at approximately 8:20 p.m. Thursday, May 21st, 2020, HFC Board of Trustees closed meeting 6 p.m. Monday, June 1st, 2020, P12 Board of Education Finance Committee meeting 5:30 p.m. Monday, June 8th, 2020, P12 Board of Education regular meeting 7 p.m. Monday, June 15th, 2020, HFC Board of Trustees regular meeting 7 p.m.
Thank you. We're not going to adjourn this meeting right now. Right after the closed session, we will come back into open meeting and close this meeting. So we'll go ahead and leave this meeting right now and we'll go to our closed session.
Beginning June of 19 through at this time, and the board used a performance form. It's called the Presidential Performance Form, and it's composed of 6 categories: institutional performance, institutional leadership, external relations, budgetary fiscal management, personal qualities, and relations with the governing board. There are about 10 items to be evaluated per category. The range of scores for each item are 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest score and 5 the highest. A score of 1 indicates that performance does not meet expectations. A 2 meets some expectations. 3 meets expectations. 4 exceeds expectations. And 5 significantly exceeds expectations. So the results of the Presidential Performance Form have demonstrated that the President had a total score of 4.3. He scored a 4 or above in all 6 categories indicated on the assessment. A total score of 4.3 means that the President's performance, quote, exceeds expectations, end quote, and leans toward the category of, quote, significantly exceeds expectations. So at this particular point, the board has made it clear that they give him a very good evaluation, and they totally support his position as president of Henry Ford College.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Mead. It deserves a round of applause for our president.
Well done.
Yes, very well done. I believe there's no other business to be taken at this meeting. Does anybody have any last comments, or does anybody want to say anything?
Is that adequate? Do we have to make a motion or anything? Or? No? Okay, good.
No. All right, at this point, if I don't hear any objections, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
No
Thank you
objection.
very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night.